Today, we are going to be talking about something that is, well, boring, but hang with me because I'm going to try to make it mildly entertaining and at best informative. Today, we are talking about budgeting. Alright guys, back on planet reality. If you're like most people, the idea of budgeting isn't exactly exciting. It's, well, boring, and it probably feels a little restrictive, and it can feel overwhelming. It can make you feel a little shameful if you've been overspending or neglecting debt or neglecting budgeting. But what I learned is that budgeting actually isn't about limiting. Budgeting can actually be really, really empowering, and when done consistently, it can be truly life-changing. I want to tell you a story all about how I really failed at budgeting and then how I finally learned to win at budgeting. I also want to let you know that today's video is sponsored by Chime, so you're going to hear me chatting throughout this video about how Chime can be your perfect partner when it comes to budgeting. Also an exciting promo if you're one of the first 1,000 people to sign up for a Chime account using my promo code COFFEE. Chime will deposit $10 into your account if you activate your Chime debit card within 30 days of enrolling. So a few months ago, my husband and I sat down and we nailed down a new budget. To be just totally honest with you guys, our budget had mostly fallen apart over the last year. And I'm telling you this because part of budgeting is just that. You're gonna have ebbs and flows, and that's okay. I like to think about budgeting as like healthy eating, right? Just one bad meal doesn't mean that you ruined everything that you did or ate that week. The same idea works with budgeting. You're not failing at budgeting if you fell off the wagon for a bit. You're only failing if you didn't get back up on the wagon again. Also, on a side note, I've never totally understood the bandwagon idiom. Like, is the bandwagon, like when you fall off the bandwagon, is that bad? Or is like the bandwagon bad and so falling off of it is good? I never really have known, and I never have taken the time to Google it. I'm not really sure why, but in this case, the bandwagon is budgeting, and that's good, so you want to be on it. Now, at first, kind of like when you start a new workout routine, it does feel sort of restrictive in the beginning. You're adjusting to new habits, and that's always hard at first, but very quickly, you're gonna get some wins. You're gonna see the saved money, you're gonna feel proud when you pass on buying something, you feel accomplished when you hit your financial goals, and then budgeting starts to feel more positive and come more naturally. Now, this all sounds good and well, right? You're gonna create a budget, stick to the budget, save money, feel great, world domination. Okay, maybe not the last one. But unfortunately, it's not quite that easy. I actually have had a lot of failed budgets before I actually found a method that really worked. But hopefully my legwork can be your gain because I'm going to share with you my 5 key steps I have realized that every successful budget needs in order to really work. The first thing you need to do to create a successful budget is take a look at your income and identify what you make each month. And ideally set this up to be the same exact amount every single month. Now for some of you this might be pretty straightforward, right? You get a paycheck every single week or every other week, it's always the same. You know exactly what you make every month. Good. For other people, this might be a little bit harder because your income can vary each month. That's actually the boat that I was in. As a YouTuber and blogger, I have multiple streams of revenue, so how much I make every single month really varies. And this was definitely a hang-up in why my budget fell apart in the first place. I didn't have a set amount that I knew was coming in every month. And one key to a good budget, I think, is you need to keep control of the things that you can. The things that you can control, you want them to be consistent and predictable. So in my case, one thing I've done that has really helped us out so much was I finally created my job as an LLC. So I opened a business bank account and now I get a paycheck from my business every single month. This has helped immensely because we have an exact amount that we make every month that we know is coming in that we can count on. So if you're in a similar boat to me, I highly suggest you do something similar to this. My business monies is now my business's money, and I can't just like tap into it if I want more groceries that week. It helps me stick to my budget because I have just our paychecks each month. I have an income that comes in every single month and I know exactly what it is and it's the same every month. Now this is one step where Chime can really help out, so give me a second to tell you a little bit more about Chime. Chime is a financial technology company. It's not a bank, but they partner with banks to offer member-first financial products. So when you open your account, you're going to get a spending account, essentially like a checking account, and then you can enroll in an optional savings account. Chime allows you to then set up direct deposit, so your paycheck can go directly into your spending Chime account, and then the best part is you don't have any hidden fees. I have been around the block long enough
to have lost my fair share of money to ridiculous fees. And with Chime, you don't have to worry about that. No fee to open your account, no monthly fees, no minimum balance, no annual fees, service fees, overdraft fees, late fees. You get the point. The reason this is so great for budgeting is, like I said, the key to a good budget is predictability. You need to know how much you have coming in every single month. And if all of a sudden one month you lose $15 to some service fee, or you accidentally overdraft and they hit you with like a $150 overdraft fee, your whole budget is thrown off for the entire month or longer. Chime offers fee-free overdraft on up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals with their Spot Me for eligible members. It's like overdraft protection, but better. And don't think that you're safe from this kind of stuff. Even good budgeters can get hit with service fees or accidentally overdraft. My husband and I are very strict with our budget. We have weekly sit-down meetings on finances, and even we overdrafted by accident the other day because I forgot I had something auto-draft from the wrong checking account. So it happens. And if you're in a tight spot with money, something like that can be crippling. I remember when I was 18 years old, I accidentally overdrafted on my bank account, and suddenly my account was at negative $130 and I was paralyzed. I was living in this tiny studio apartment that was like a couple $100s in rent, working part-time in school, and I didn't know how I was going to come back from that. $130 to me felt like $5,000. And getting put in a situation like that can make it feel impossible to ever get a handle on your budgeting. So setting yourself up with something like Chime, where you know that your money is your money and you're not going to have surprise fees, is key when it comes to step one, which is identify your set income each month. All right, step number two, this step might seem kind of straightforward when it comes to budgeting, but you need to list out all your expenses every single month. Now, some of these are going to be really obvious. You probably know how much you spend on mortgage or rent every single month, cell phone, cable, insurance, daycare. These things tend to be stationary. They're always the same amount. But other categories can really ebb and flow, and that's what makes budgeting so dang tricky. For the things that aren't exactly the same every single month, what I suggest you do is you look back at what you spent on these things over the last 3 to 6 months and find a good average. This is going to be your starting point. And then I like to break up my categories a little bit because this can be helpful with tracking and deciding how you're going to budget. Now, you don't need to be over the top with this. Like, personal care can encompass your hair and your makeup and your nails. You don't need to break it down into those categories. That's just like getting ridiculous. But some categories are worth breaking up. For example, food. I want to break this one up into groceries, takeout, restaurants, coffee shops, maybe add bars or like alcohol to that if you go out a lot. I also find I like to list out all my subscriptions every month, since those are really easy ones to cut. If in doubt, I do break up into smaller categories at first because you can always combine as you go, but it's really helpful to have the categories sort of broken up a little bit because it's going to help you decide where you're overspending. And do not forget about some of those like miscellaneous categories, things like a birthday party you have to get a gift for, or like your car or home repairs, seasonal spending like Christmas, donations, charities, things like that. Like I said, your best place to start is by looking at your spending over the last 3 to 6 months. This way you're not forgetting any categories that might sneak up on you. All right, we are plugging right along onto step 3. Now, very likely your number from step 1, income, and your number from step 2, expenses, aren't exactly equal. Maybe your income is higher, which is good for you. You're already on a good track. And maybe your expenses are exceeding your monthly income, which, you know what, also still good for you because you're watching this video and you're trying to get back on track. But it does mean that you need to follow step 3, which is find where you can cut back. And hey, listen, even if currently your income is higher than your expenses, it still doesn't hurt to take this step and just see if there's anywhere you can cut back a little bit too. That excess money could maybe be better serving you for savings or investments or other things. So don't think you can skip over step 3. Luckily, you just did a lot of legwork in step 2, so you should be able to see all your expenses spent over the last few months laid out. So it's time to get real. Which categories were too high? And this shouldn't feel like a blame game. It shouldn't feel shameful. So what, you've been overspending, okay? Everyone has done it at one point or another. Granted, some of us maybe have done it more than others, but no one is totally free of never having a treat yourself moment, okay? So no shame in this. Just look at your categories and see where you're overspending. I'll tell you where some of mine are, because I'm all about that transparency, okay? 1, groceries. I can always tell that my budget is starting to wean when my grocery spending gets higher. And worst of all, when I spend more at the grocery store, I'm not actually eating more. I usually just create more food waste, and I hate that. Food waste is one of my biggest pet peeves. Another one for me is general shopping, you know, just like the little odds and ends that add up. You go on a quick trip to Target, some late night Amazon purchases here and then. They seem small in the moment, it's like $25, $30, $10, but then it adds up to a bigger number. And those are the ones for me that always get away from me when I'm not staying on top of my budget. Which categories are too high, and how can you realistically cut them down? Now, realistically, I'm using that word very purposefully here. I don't want you to take your $800 monthly grocery spending and say you're only going to spend $400 from now on. Unless you're like in really over your head and you need to do some serious cutbacks now, try to be realistic because you'll be more likely to stick with it. Cut back to $650 for the first month with a goal of getting down to $500 after 3 months. And I know that this tip may go against the grain of some of the other financial tips out there that are like, budgeting is an all or nothing thing. You are overspending and you need to get it together. I do think that if you're overspending, you need to get it together. But unless you have debt collectors calling you and you like can't make rent, I think it's absolutely okay if you allow yourself to ease into a budget over 2 to 3 months to make it an easier transition. Because when you do that, in my humble opinion, you'll be more likely to stick with it. If you're easing into it, just make sure you stick with cutting back again next month until you hit your goal. Like I said, I find budgeting to be like any other habit. It gets easier over time. You do it 1 month and the next month it's gonna feel easier. Now you are gonna have to give up some things for step 3, but I don't want you to let this feel restrictive. Let it feel empowering that you are finally taking control of your money and freeing because you actually are gonna know where your money is being spent. It's going to allow you to meet any financial goals that you've set, and that's not restrictive at all. That's freaking amazing. All right, step 4, this next step is the act of creating your budget by assigning every dollar from your income to a category. Now, some people call this the $0 budget, which means that every dollar from your budget, from your income, is being spent every single month, but I don't like calling that because it just sounds frivolous to me, like you're spending all of your money. To me, the best kind of budget has leftover, meaning your income exceeds your expenses. And I know $0 budget means that too, but I don't know, I just don't like the name. The basic idea is if you don't have a spot where your money is going, then it's just gonna get spent on random stuff. So say you've got a budget and you have $200 left over every month. You want to assign that $200 to something so it has an intentional place that it's going. If you have debt, I suggest you throw it there. Otherwise, maybe it's saving for a home project or vacation, it's a general safety net that you're saving for, investments, whatever. You just need to give that money a place where it needs to go.
One thing I love about Chime is actually their optional savings account.
They have a save when I get paid option that allows you to automatically move money directly into your savings account when you get paid. For me, I think money can be a very like out of sight, out of mind thing nowadays, especially since everything's electronic, when we're not like carrying actual cash around. And I think it's why it's so easy to get into credit card debt. But the same idea holds true here. If you're taking the money directly out when you get paid, you're never really gonna see it, so you're never really gonna miss it. So it's a great way to save and make sure you're sticking to that line item on your budget. Chime savings account also has a roundup option where it automatically round up your purchases to the nearest dollar and then move that change into your savings. And this can be a really another great way to sneak in a little bit of extra savings into your account in a way that isn't going to impact your budget at all. Okay, on to the 5th and final step, and ultimately I think probably the most important, and that is what I will call the weekly check-ins. It's not all that hard to do steps 1 through 4. They're just a little time consuming. You have to like commit to sit down and do them, but they don't actually take like a lot of willpower beyond just saying, okay, I can spend less here. But if you're not committed to following through and staying on top of your budget, it's just gonna slowly dissolve away. And trust me, because I've slowly dissolved away budgets in my past many times. And that's why the weekly check-in is key to making your budget work. Okay, so the weekly check-ins, these should be quick, maybe 10 minutes. I don't want this to feel overwhelming. If you're budgeting with a spouse, just set a time that you can do them together. My husband and I usually do them Tuesday mornings after I drop the kids off at daycare, sometimes Sunday evenings, whatever. You're gonna look at what you spent the last week and see if you're staying on track. If anything's over, can you make any adjustments to balance it out or prevent you from going over? So usually our conversations are around meals and groceries that week, since that's a big line item in our budget. We talk about upcoming purchases that we need to plan for. It's also a really good time to assess your budgeting and if you have certain things that are working or not working. Like, do you have one category where you keep going over? Why? Did you not budget enough for it? Or maybe you need to make a lifestyle adjustment. any categories that should be combined for better tracking. I also really like to use this time to celebrate any wins. We'll check any savings we've grown or financial goals that we've gotten closer to, and this really helps with motivating us to keep pushing on with our budget. Don't forget celebrating the little wins when you do your check-in. Okay friends, so that is my little 5-step program to get a budget that's gonna work, but the real truth here is that a budget is only gonna work if you want it to. I feel like it's like trying to get a smoker to quit smoking, right? They need to want to quit. And in order for your budget to work, you're gonna need to want it to work. So you need to set some goals to work towards to give you the motivation you need so you have those little wins to check in on when you have your weekly check-ins, and you have some intrinsic motivation to really be following. Maybe you want to pay off debt, maybe you have a home renovation, maybe you want to pay off your home, maybe you need a safety net. Whatever it is, you need to set your own little financial goals to keep you motivated. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you all in my next video.